their voters live. They know that that's a Reform voter, or that's a Lib Dem voter, that's a Tory voter. They can just knock them up, as in bang on the doorbell, and knock on the door every 4 years and get them out to vote. What this party needs to do is to dig down like Japanese knotweed to get into the kind of Tory ground.
Yeah, a nice little metaphor. Is there another potential hazard here? And that is, we've seen before, if people can join a party and influence getting rid of the leader or influence the next leader, we might see a lot of people with ill intent getting in, as we saw in the Ed Miliband year, 10 quid for a vote, boof, Jeremy Corbyn gets it.
Yes, and there will be some ways to stop this happening. When I interviewed Yusuf earlier for GB News, he wouldn't write or even disclose this detail on the channel, but we'll see detail of that emerge next month, and I fully expect there'll be thresholds of a certain number of MPs to force a vote no confidence, or councillors, or even of members. You need to have those limits to ensure you have a degree of stability for the leader. Looking at the Tory party, they're in a similar mess at the moment, but at some point we're going to see some evidence of this party growing up, and that's what it needs to do if it wants to have any chance of going further at the next election. As you said, Chris Hope, a mountain to climb, but Zia Yusuf, are you impressed with him as an individual? I was, and I've met a number of these people around Nigel Farage in recent years. I can think back a decade or so, more than that, to the guys around UKIP when Nigel Farage ran that, and it was a bit of an amateur hour. It professionalised, I think, post the referendum, with the Brexit party being set up. There were some very good candidates. You were one of them, Martin. I won't say if you were a great candidate, but you're a colleague of mine. I'll be nice about you. But there were very good candidates on the Brexit party, and they've taken that into Reform UK. They've got, forgive me, 2,300 candidates that are going to put up for the May local elections, 3,000 applications, 75,000 members. This party is going places. Whether it wins the election next time round, that is a very, very long shot. Chris Hope, excellent exclusive as ever. Now, LTNs have raked in 3 million quid in the last few years. They could be going nationwide. We're debating that next. I'm Martin Dordney on GB News, Britain's News Channel.
I'm Andrew Pearce. This is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's News Channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Your lunchtime update on the stories that matter across the UK.
From breaking news and insightful analysis, inspiring stories and lively debates.
You're comparing yourself to a former Prime Minister. Which is it?
Stay informed, stay updated, stay entertained.
I just don't know how anyone would not want to be there.
Every weekday from midday.
We are Good Afternoon Britain, only on GB News.
Britain's News Channel.
Hooray!
Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
It's a very difficult issue, this, right? As far as we know, the boxer with male chromosomes was born with female genitalia.
Yeah, I mean, it's actually quite simple. You know, sex in humans is binary and immutable because we are mammals. And there is a minority of people who have disorders of sexual development, and that can affect a person's reproductive organs. But these people are male or female. And yesterday, what we witnessed was basically just glorified male violence against women and girls. The difference is, I mean, that happens every day all over the world. And the difference is that in every other circumstance, we consider beating up women to be wrong, but it was deemed acceptable by those at the IOC because they're claiming that it's sport, but it's not. It's violence and it's wrong.
Peter, Lottie's right, isn't she, that we've been talking a lot recently about violence against women and girls, and regardless of whether this person is intersex or transgender, they have male chromosomes. That means they have a very, very distinct biological advantage that could actually be fatal to a female athlete competing against them.
Well, of course, sport does need to be fair, and we do need to examine this case very thoroughly. There are reports that the boxer, Iman Khalif, was born a biological woman. She is not transgender. She is not non-binary. She is not intersex. She may have elevated levels of testosterone, but that's entirely natural. It's beyond her control. It's the way she was born. And that is why the International Olympic Committee has said that she falls within the rules.
GB News, the People's Channel.
I'm Bev Turner. Thank you for joining us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Mark Dolan, and this is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back, 5:47, the final furlong now. We've got a juicy debate rocking up for you now. The controversy over 20-mile-an-hour speed limits is intensifying across the UK as, guess what, the Labour Party has signalled its support for expanding these zones and also LTNs. Today we're asking, are these speed limits a necessary measure for public safety, or are they a hindrance or even a cash cow to simply milk drivers dry? Well, joining me now to discuss this is the founder of Fair Fuel UK, Howard Cox, and also the former editor of Labour List, Peter Edwards. Gentlemen, welcome to the studio. Let's start with you, Peter. As it's a Labour Party idea, Sir Keir Starmer said it should be up to local councils. It seems that the Transport Secretary has agreed. Tell us why you think these are a good idea.
Yeah, and we've got to keep separate 20 miles per hour zones and low traffic neighbourhoods, and it's the latter which tend to be more controversial. But we know if you have the misfortune to be in an accident as a pedestrian, with every additional 10 miles per hour on the speed of the car, you're more likely to lose your life. And about 1,700 people a year lose their life on the roads, about 20,000 more are seriously injured. This, to me, seems like a proportionate measure to tackle something that should concern us all, which is road deaths and road accidents.
Howard Cox, it of course came in Wales as a blanket limit. It was detested. 70% people objected to it. And in fact, they did a big U-turn on the limit there. Tell us why you think 20-mile-an-hour limits are a bad thing.
Well, there are a number of reasons why. I mean, Wales have actually had an epiphany. It's a Labour government over there as well, and Louise Haigh is going against that. I just don't understand why she's doing this. Now, in a Belfast study, Belfast University study, they did a 3-year study, and there was no demonstrable difference between 20 and 30 mile an hour in terms of accidents, deaths, any of those sorts of things. And the interesting thing about this is, if you drive at 20 mile an hour, you emit more nitrogen dioxide than you do at 30 mile an hour.
So it's more polluting.
It's more polluting.
Because, of course, you're slowing down, you're in a lower gear. So two factlets there, Peter, to contest your information about the impact on road safety, and also if it's more polluting. Sure, that's a double whammy. It's a bad idea.
Well, you've got to keep, as I said, keep separate these different things. You know, I firmly believe, and I've seen countervailing studies, that the speed of the car which hits you has an effect on your chances of surviving. But that's the 20 miles per hour zone. There's a broader debate on the low traffic neighbourhoods, which have been very controversial. And, you know, for people who don't have one at the end of their street, that's where a busy road is shut, and there's often a tree or a couple of visually attractive devices put there to stop people going down it. And I can understand that because it's disruptive and it doesn't reduce car usage. There's a risk that it moves it to the outskirts of towns where perhaps poorer folk live. So you might have poorer folk being exposed to more fumes. But that's low traffic neighbourhoods. I'm convinced that 20 miles per hour zones will save lives.
OK, we just heard from Howard Cox why you think that's not the case. My broader point is this. It always seems to be working class motorists that hit the hardest. It won't affect people who work from home, any of this. It won't affect the latte class. It won't affect those who cycle. It won't affect anybody who lives in Westminster, but it will affect people who are dependent on their cars. And Howard Cox, it seems to me that they're always the one feeling the pinch.
Well, I've been campaigning for 15 years, as you know, fighting on fuel duty. We're still one of the highest taxed nations in the world in terms of motorists. The simple thing is that I predicted and I forecast very, very much in all the campaign I did for mayor and also as an MP, I said there will be huge anti-driver policies coming from this Labour government. And I'm afraid it's purely a cash grab. That's all they're doing.
Oh, no, it's not a cash grab. We can disagree on principle, and that's absolutely fine. But I'm convinced this has saving lives at the heart of it.
No, it's not.
OK, well, gentlemen, we have to leave it there. A fantastic debate. Howard, Peter, always a pleasure. Thank you very much for joining me in the studio. Now, ministers are reportedly drawing up plans to allow young Europeans to live and work in parts of Britain as part of a wider reset of relations with Brussels after Brexit, despite Labour repeatedly insisting it has no plans for a youth mobility scheme. However, Labour sources told The Times that ministers privately recognise that they have to give ground to issue to prevent Tory blocks. Now, to discuss this, I'm joined by former Conservative MP and Jacob Rees-Mogg, GB News presenter, of course, State of the Nation, 7 till 8. Jacob, I'm assuming you'll cover this on your show. This, to me, feels very much like a rowback on Brexit.
Oh, I think that's absolutely right. I think that you've seen a number of signs that the Labour Party wants to row back on Brexit, that going back to free movement of people, just as the figures are showing that the Conservative policy on migration was bringing numbers down, is a betrayal of what people voted for in the last election. Then you have rumours they want to bring Ollie Robbins back as Cabinet Secretary, and he was the cheese-eating surrender monkey of the Brexit negotiations. So I think you're seeing quite clearly that Labour never liked Brexit and is now looking to try to reverse it.
Jacob, the thing I love about you, you always absolutely sit on the fence with your opinions. Do you think people have a right to be concerned? Back in the days of the Brexit referendum, so Jacob, you know as well as I do, I spoke to working class people all across Britain, brickies, plasterers, labourers, truck drivers, factory workers, hospitality workers. Those are the ones most impacted by the freedom of movement of young people under 30s into Britain. And it seems to me that history might be about to repeat itself.
You're absolutely right. Free movement of labour was most damaging to the standard of living of the least well-off. People who were well-to-do benefited from free movement of labour, but the least well-off found that entry-level jobs, their first job, was harder to get and the pay was lower. Free movement of labour, excess migration, lowers wages, and that is obviously particularly difficult for the least well-off in society.
Superb stuff. Thank you very much for joining us. Of course, State of the Nation with Sir Jacob Rees-Mogg from your magnificent pile there in Somerset. 8 to 9 p.m. tonight, exclusively on GB News. Thank you very much for joining us. Back with State of the Nation now. Don't forget, it's Jubes and Co next with Michelle Jury. That'll be one not to miss. Then, of course, 7 till 8, it's GB News Tonight, and that's with my colleague Chris Hope, who gave us a fantastic exclusive today about Reform UK, planning more democracy, planning more structure, even the ability to vote Nigel Farage out as leader. Could that come back to bite them on the behind as miscreants get involved to try and influence the vote? That's for another time. Now, it's your weather with Alex Burko. A fantastic evening.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, very good day to you. Here's your latest GB News weather update coming to you from the Met Office. Storm Lillian is going to batter some parts of the UK overnight, bring some very wet and windy weather, particularly to northern parts of England. But through today, we do have a cold front making its way southeastwards, bringing a bit of cloud and a bit of rain for some before it clears away as we go through into this evening.